Okay, there we go. All right, good morning, everybody. Sorry for changing the time this morning, but I had two other meetings that they decided to schedule on top of this one, so at the same time. So this morning we're going to move into, for our orientation sessions, we're really moving into some of our youth development theory. And so we're going to start with two that we've already talked about essential elements in other sessions, where the belonging, independence, generosity, and mastery. And so we're moving into two that I think are probably some of our more important. These two, I think, build a foundation for what we do. One of those is the ages and stages of youth. We're going to talk about developmental levels, etc. And then we're going to move into the targeting life skills model. So that, when we talk about the targeting life skills model, we talk a lot about, youth learn life skills within 4-H. And so how do we know that? Well, we do have research behind that idea, and the targeting life skills model is one of those research theories behind that. So sorry, I'm just trying to get my desk a little organized here. So when we talk about developmental levels of youth, or ages and stages, you're going to hear it called both. I tend to say developmental levels because we do know that young people are not necessarily at the same, developmentally they're at different levels. They may not be right at the same age level. But as a 4-H professional, you are going to be training volunteers and also working with those young people. And I think it's really important that both our volunteers and our staff have a good understanding of what a young person should act like or be like. It's a lot of times we just forget, this child is 5, they shouldn't be taking on these responsibilities, or just there's a lot of things. And so there's four levels of stages, or 4 developmental levels, and those are physical development, social development, intellectual development, and emotional development. You may also hear it be cognitive development instead of intellectual development. And we have to, again, remember, and a lot of times we have to remind parents that not all young people are at the same level. And what I always find really interesting is we also know that a lot of young people, they may be at one stage physically, but another stage socially or emotionally. And so, that really is an important piece to remember. Okay, so when we go and talk about this, we look at 5 to 8-year-olds. And yes, you are going to see a lot of pictures of my child through this. And actually, when I originally put this PowerPoint together, he was right at this 5 to 8-year-old range. And so the other day, or I was going through it last night, and I was like, I really should probably change a lot of these pictures. But this was when he was at this age. You can see, they're losing their teeth, they're goofy. This was his actual Cloverbud. The picture of the children together was actually the Cloverbud. But when we're developing those relationships, we have to remember that not all youth, develop at the same pace. And so there are a couple of guides. There's an older guide, and I probably have a copy in the office that was put together, years and years ago, probably even before I started working in Extension, but it has a lot of the same good information. It's called Ages and Stages of Child and Youth Development, a guide for leaders. Well, even if that one's not available, there's a lot of information I'm actually going to be sharing with everybody when I send out the handouts and such. I do have a couple of documents. I have a document from Illinois that talks about the developmental levels of the different ages, and based on the four developmental levels, and then what is a characteristic and what's an implication. So what's something that we can do in extension and in 4-H for that. So when we talk about the physical development, we really are talking about the growth of the body and the development of those motor skills. Social development is looking at the interaction between children and their ability to function in social settings. Emotional development is how they handle their feelings and express those feelings. And then finally, the intellectual or the cognitive development is how they learn. So when you think about these 5 to 8-year-olds, these are typically what I'm going to share with you are what is the typical response. Like I said before, we do know that they may, we may have young people that are at different stages, just depending on what happens, what's going on. So with physical, they are really working on mastering their physical skills. They're trying to control those large muscles rather than the small muscles. So, there's certain things that they probably are not as good at. Socially, they're trying to learn how to make friends, and they're probably at this point going to have several best friends at one time. This is where you really think about, this is where, the whole class are kind of friends, especially when you think about kindergarten, first grade, that type of thing. They're becoming more aware of their peers and their opinions. This is really a lot of times their first exposure to peers. They are also very family oriented. Nothing's more exciting than when mom and dad or grandma or grandpa show up to have lunch with them, or, they get so excited when, to show off their parents at this age. Emotionally, they're trying to seek fairness by being nice. The way they see fairness is they are nice to people and people are nice back. And they don't understand when they're nice to somebody and that person doesn't reciprocate that. They're seeking parental and adult approval. I always joke and said, if I didn't like what I was doing, I was going to go back to school to be a kindergarten teacher, because kindergartners, they just think their teacher walks on water. And, I always thought that would be kind of, they actually liked you and they weren't little brats when you started working with them. But, and they also tend to behave in ways to avoid punishment. A lot of teachers at this age still have the green, the yellow, the red card, and then maybe even an orange card, or however it works. I remember the first time Cody got his card flipped to a yellow card from a green card, and man, you would have thought that the world had ended. It was kind of funny, and it was a really good learning lesson. He was in one of those moods. You know how 5 to 8-year-olds get in those moods? And he was in one of those moods, and his teacher had said something to him, and he mumbled under his breath something not very, just kind of something to go back at her, but he mumbled it under his breath, and she heard it. And so she knew that if she did that, it would take care of it. And you know what? He never did that again. Probably does it now, but didn't do it back at that age. They're also, and then when you look at cognitive development, they base their learning on reality and accuracy. They, things that are concrete at this age. They really can't look at abstract ideas. They're learning to sort things into categories. Those of you that have had children at this age, how many of you have sorted everything under the sun? Probably even a little bit younger. But I remember just sitting there and sorting by color, and then sorting by type, and sorting by, whatever. And that was one of his favorite activities to do. And then they're beginning to develop that sense of cause and effect. So if I do this, this is going to happen. It's starting to develop at that age. So some of the things that we need to think about when we think about this age group is physically, crafts are going to end up messy. We know that. Plan on that. You know, this is where you get big sheets of paper, or you get those plastic tablecloths and you put them over everything, because if you have glue, glue's going to get on your table, it's going to get on your chairs, it's probably going to get on your carpet or your flooring. If you have glitter, don't even get started about glitter. Probably want to avoid glitter at this age, because you will have glitter everywhere. Activities need to be just that. They need to be active. This age group is not going to sit. You can see what happens when they start sitting. You know, they start acting like these young people. I mean, granted, they were posing for a picture. They had just come back from, I think that was the one, they had just come back from a walk. They had taken a walk to the park that wasn't very far from the leader's house with cameras, because they were learning about photography that day. And so, you know, this was them, you know, probably, I'm guessing that probably another child was taking that photo. I don't, you know, but that's kind of what they, you know, that's what they like. You need to plan activities that practice both large muscle and small muscle events. One of the things, when Cody was a Cloverbud, and I've done this with other groups at this age, his Cloverbud leader had me come in. She did Cloverbuds the way Cloverbuds needs to be taught, where each week it was a different topic that we do in 4-H. So one week they may learn about rabbits, and one week they learned about horses. We never had a live horse, but those kids walked away with a lot of information. One week they might learn about photography. We always did some kind of nutrition lesson where they made their snack and they learned about healthy eating, that type of thing. But I used to always go in and teach the horse lesson. And one of the things that we would do at the end of the lesson is they'd all bring a stick horse, or they would make a stick horse. Sometimes we had them just make stick horses there, but either that or they would bring one, and then we would have races with the stick horse. So they were learning, you know, they were using their legs for those large motor, but they were also using their hands to guide that stick horse. And so it was that both that they were doing. So those are the types of activities. They need a lot of praise as they seek, you know, as they're looking to seek adult approval. So, you know, always telling them that they're doing a good job. One thing that I find with this age group, you go, oh my gosh, that's so good. Have you thought about, you know, maybe putting the glitter on the paper instead of on the table? Those types of and they're going to do that because you suggested it to them. And then work on skills that can be completed successfully by beginners. This is really why we say they just need to be introduced. Youth in this age group, especially in 4-H, should not be doing the same activities and the same projects as the older youth. They're not developmentally ready for it. They're not developmentally physically ready or mentally or so, you know, any of them. And you're going to have parents that are going to say, oh, but my child is. Well, great. I'm really happy that your child is awesome. But our program is designed for all children, so we have to look at it in that manner. And then then we look at social. You know, small group activities are best. It's best to keep these in smaller groups. If you have a large number of Cloverbuds, break them into smaller groups. Break them into, you know, also this is a good one when with this age group, you should be, or the volunteers should be breaking them into groups instead of them deciding who's, you know, these three are going to go together and these three, because what you want to do is make sure that they're interacting with different youth at different activities, so that they get that interaction and they learn how to interact with other people, with other children. They need a lot of, a lot of praise, and they also need to accept accept the beliefs and values of their parents at this point. So, you know, again, we have to be cautious of how we talk with them. Emotionally, we should focus on cooperative games where every child wins. And I know you're going to say, look at what's, we're seeing some research right now or some things happening where every kid gets a trophy, but this is a different situation. Once they get past this 8-year-old age range, then they have the emotional ability to understand what's happening, why someone is winning before they, when they did. An example of this, when I was a county educator in Michigan, we had a county fair that was not 4-H, didn't have anything to do with the actual running of the fair, especially the youth portion. All I did was show up, support them. We had a booth for extension in the commercial exhibit hall, and then the Leaders Council had a food booth. But one year we had, and they allowed all ages to show. Now, I won't go into I had many meetings with the fair board, and it was kind of a split decision about this age group. But one year we had a 6-year-old win grand champion lamb. Great. It was a great for her. Cute little girl, of course, a cute little girl with missing teeth and the whole bit's going to probably win with a judge. Well, I remember distinctly the next year when I don't even know if she placed in the top 2 in her class, and she walked out of that arena just bawling and did not understand why she wasn't winning again, because she didn't have the emotional ability to comprehend that concept of winning and losing. And so she didn't lose by any stretch. I mean, we know just getting in the ring is doing it, but she thought she was going to win everything again. And so that's really, that example to me is a perfect example of why this age group is cooperative only. There is to be no competitive activities within 4-H in this age group. They also, we need to find ways to have more successes than failures. So in those activities, we need to have those activities so they can have success instead of failure. And if you see that something isn't working, or a volunteer sees something that isn't working, it's really good if you can switch gears and figure out how to make it work. And if it doesn't, because sometimes it just doesn't. You just have a bad just a bad activity. We've all had that happen before, and it just is a complete failure. So when you're done, you need to sit down and spend the time thinking about how, if you decide to do that activity again, how that can be more successful for this age group. You need to be able to discuss fears or other issues that are important to them, no matter, it doesn't matter even how small it is. I think that this is really important because sometimes they're scared to do things. And so we need to think about what we could do to help them. If they're not being successful, sit down and talk to them about how they can be. Then when we look at the cognitive or the intellectual development of this age group, it's really good to read a story. Reading to the child at this age group is effective and enjoyed. If any of you have ever done the Lego robotics, there is a program for this age group called We Do Robotics. And I absolutely love that because it takes a storybook that young people, is pretty familiar. They have to create one of the characters. And the reason I know this one especially, because when they were working on it, when they were testing it out, when we lived in Idaho, Cody was a guinea pig. He was in the office one day, and he was at this age, and our STEM specialist came in and said, "Hey, Carrie, can I borrow your kid for a while?" And the story, The Gruffalo, if any of you are familiar, if you've had a boy, you probably know the story, The Gruffalo. So so you read the story of the Gruffalo. At this point, he didn't have to read the story to Cody because he was way too familiar with it. It was one of his very favorite stories. But then they created either the mouse or the snake or I can't remember what all the characters are now, I should, but anyway, they created one of those with Legos and then hooked it up to the computer, and it was like 3 keystrokes to make that animal work, and it was fantastic. But it related back to something that he knew, and it was just, so that's an example of storytelling, or when we would do the horse activity, I would always find a book of that age range that talked about horses, that dealt with a horse, probably a child and a horse. They like to hear that. Helping them, help them predict answers to their questions. So helping them to figure out the answers, because they're probably not going to be the best at answering questions. You're going to have everybody try. Being flexible, providing a variety of activities. This is the other piece. You need to make sure that you are working with, or that you have, if it's a half an hour session or an hour session, you want to switch activities probably every 10 minutes at most, because they're going to get frustrated, they're going to get bored. It's a lot of planning, but it's a lot of fun. And then role playing and skits are often popular with this age group. They love to do that kind of stuff. And so really, what we're trying to do with young people in these age groups, doesn't matter which age range they are, we're trying to help them develop a positive self-concept, experience successes in what they're attempting to do, but also if they fail, making sure that failure is a positive one, that we teach them what they can do differently next time to not have failure. We want to help them to become independent. We want to have them accepted by people of different ages, peers, as well as those in authority, give and receive affection, and have adventure. So one of the things, if you look at this puzzle, I know it's kind of sideways, but you should be able to read them. I'm actually going to be sharing this puzzle with you. There's a puzzle for each age group. And what is a really good activity, if you do this with volunteers, is you take these puzzle pieces and you cut the puzzle apart into each piece, and then you mix up the pieces, you put them in envelopes, you put the volunteers in, and if we were in a all together, I would be doing this activity with you, but you put them in and you break the volunteers into groups, usually 4 groups, if preferably if you have enough. And then they have to figure out, okay, so one group is a 6 to 8 year olds, or you could label it 5 to 8 year olds. These puzzles just happen to be from 6 to 8 year olds. One is 9 to 11 year olds, and then 12 to 14 and 15 to 18. They have to figure out, are these characteristics part of is this for this age group? And then if they're not, they have to figure out how to trade puzzle pieces. Eventually they're going to figure out, because the puzzles are 4 different color schemes, and so they're going to figure out, oh, these are my colors. Like if they just have one green and all the rest are pinks, browns, and yellows, they're going to know that the green is not theirs. But when they in the beginning, it's really good because they start out. But you can see a lot of the things that I talked about are in this. They're beginning to experience empathy for others, but they're still really wrapped up. Everything's about them and about themselves, but they are starting to see some empathy. But yeah, so we've got, this is one piece. And then I also, like I said, I also have the other handout that I'm going to share. We're going to move on to 9 to 11 year olds. And with this age group, they're really starting, their physical development is starting to move into the forefront. This is, we're going to see a lot of growth spurts at different rates. You're going to see the girls tend to grow and mature faster at this age range than the boys. So you may have girls that are physically bigger than the boys are. I know that was the case, up until probably 2 years ago, or even this year, at my house. But we do, we are going to see that. They do like to have the, they like to have proactive or active learning experiences, hands-on. When you think about physical, they like to experience, they experience a steady increase in large muscle development, balance, strength, coordination. We need to make sure that we are, that we don't, because they are going to be very uncoordinated at this age. Just a kind of a funny story. My mother still makes fun of it. When I was at this age, my arms actually did touch almost touched my knees, because I was just growing in the upper body. My legs hadn't started growing yet. It's changed now, but but I still have long arms. But but I was very uncoordinated because of that. And my feet were huge. And I think, with a lot of girls, you're going to see, that uncoordination. And so you just have to work with them on that. They are very active, have lots of energy. They, again, may have different maturity rates. And then they experience an increase in small muscle coordination. So this is really where, sports, they become better at sports. They can start actually throwing the ball and catching the ball well and understanding what that looks like. Socially, they see adults as authority still at this age. They're following rules out of a respect for authority, but they're also starting to look at that authority a little bit. They're loyal to groups, clubs, or gangs. How many of you remember at this age having your secret club, especially probably girls? I didn't see it with my son, but it could have been. I know at this age he had secret language, or at this age they had secret languages, or they would have this code for their writing that they would do. But I remember as a girl at this age, we had secret clubs. And this is, again, 9 to 11 is where we have the majority of our 4-H members, because they like belonging to something and they're really loyal to that. Again, they have those code languages, passwords. There may be a password to get into their bedroom, that type of thing. They identify with individuals of the same gender. So even thinking about this as you're looking at programming, probably at this age, the girls still have cooties and boys have cooties, and they just don't. It's just not it's probably better to keep them with their same age groups or same gender groups. They prefer to work in groups, in cooperative activities. This is a good one to do some of the National Youth Science Day experiment, or it's not even called that now. I can't remember what it's called. But in October, when we do National Youth Science Day, it's really good to have those, do those activities in smaller groups in the club meetings, that type of thing. They approach problem solving with a negotiating style. They try to compromise with their peers and adults. Emotionally, they still accept their parent or family beliefs. They admire and imitate older youth. So we have to remind our older youth in our clubs that this age group especially is looking to them, and they're going to imitate their behaviors. They're starting to develop some of those decision-making skills, so it's good to give them some choices, probably not like super hard choices, like, do you want red or orange punch today? Or, maybe you have 2 activities and you let them decide which activity they want to do. They are beginning to question authority, like I said before. But they still find it really, really important to have that involvement of the caring adult. They need that caring adult there, and they need to have that acceptance from that adult. They find comparisons with others difficult to process. So at this age, it's not good to compare, oh, you didn't do it like Johnny did it. You need to, you need to do it that way. Each child, that's difficult for them to understand. Cognitively or intellectually, their academic abilities are varied greatly. They're starting to get an increased attention span, but their interests are like, they change so quickly. So we need to think about that. That's why, at this age, that's why like the short-term special interest clubs, where maybe you're only doing a project for 6 to 8 weeks instead of a whole year, because young people are going to get bored with doing something for a whole year. But if you do it in short stints, then they stay involved. They stay excited about it. They're starting to learn to use good judgment. They're starting to judge ideas in absolutes, rights or wrongs. They really don't have much tolerance for middle ground. They don't like gray area. And they have interests in collections and hobbies. So they're starting to collect things. They're not sorting things. They're actually now starting to collect things. So some things we need to think about with this age group is, we need to plan activities that allow them to move around. So I love the jump roping one. That's a great, there's actually some clubs in the East, especially, that do, they have a jump rope. I mean, that is their project, is jump roping. And they do these double Dutch contests, and it's really cool. I've seen some examples of that, and it's really pretty cool. But shooting sports, they're probably, you need to make sure that they're active within shooting sports. I know many of you have observed when you have young people, especially this age group, at a shooting sports event, they get restless because you get one pellet at a time, and they, and then they only may shoot 5 times, and then they have to go stand and wait for the next person to shoot. So you need to make sure, and your volunteers need to make sure, that there is something for them to do, so they're not messing around behind. You need to vary activities. There needs to be not just sports, but also physical activities. Again, just a variety of things. And we, at this age especially, that you should avoid competitions between genders. Should never be, girls versus boys or anything like that. It should just be, all together. Socially, we need to clarify and enforce reasonable limits. They need to know what the rules are and what the consequences are beforehand, which is a really good thing for the club to come up with what those are. Plan plenty of time for them to be with individuals of their same gender, and group activities are really important. Looking at emotional, provide emotional development. Provide correction quietly. It should really be a one-on-one correction rather than in front of the whole group. Give positive feedback and really look for those successes. Avoid generalized praise. So, you can do like, oh, you guys are doing so great. You might, at this point, you might need to think about how you're going to do that a little differently. Be present at group activities, but be visible, but in the background. And this is really important for our volunteers as well, they need to let the youth do those activities. Stand back, just stand and watch them. You don't need, and when they ask for help, or if you see a child that's struggling, you could step in and help that child. But don't, so often we try to do things for this age group and the younger age group too. We need to provide a safety net of an adult that's within those boundaries. And so, again, being there, but allowing them to experience it and try it. And then cognitive or intellectually, they enjoy those hands-on activities. They form, help them form groups or clubs with common interests or hobbies. That's one of the reasons why they're in 4-H, is because of that group or that club. And so there might be a way to think about it in a way that you could do it, within the club. and vary activities that offer to engage rapidly changing interests. All right, and then the puzzle for this one, you can see, it's got pretty much everything that I talked about. You can see though how they figure out, they're also all different shapes. So volunteers are not stupid, they figure it out. Okay, so 12 to 14-year-olds, I'm actually gonna go to the puzzle just so you can see, having a room full of young teenagers of this age, kind of that middle school range, can either be super energizing for us or super terrifying for us as youth workers or for volunteers. This is probably one of the hardest age groups to work with. I am so happy that I don't have this age range at my house anymore, because man, this was a tough time, but it's also super, super fun. I mean, I love it. This is the prime time to really start engaging them in some leadership roles, giving them a voice in decision making, having them involved and engaged in their own development. And so this is where we really start looking at our young people in our program as participants rather than recipients of the education and in the learning process. So it's really fun to have them try this. And so they start feeling ownership in their projects, and having them involved in that planning results in a buy-in from this and a commitment from them. So if we look at the physical, they exhibit a wide range of sexual maturity and growth patterns between genders and then also within gender groups. They experience rapid changes in their physical appearance. And their changes in their appearance can occur, like I said, occur at different rates. Those of you that are girls know that at this age, you have a whole variety you have some girls that look like they're 16 or 18, and you have some girls that still look like they're 9 or 10. And that is very, very difficult on girls. They don't understand why that's happening. And so being there to just, if that ever, you're going to see emotions come out because of that, probably, that won't be what triggered the emotion, but that's really the underlying issue a lot of times. They're interested in activities that involve individuals of the opposite sex at this age. They're starting to look at the opposite sex. They're looking more towards peers than their parents or the adults. They are really seeking acceptance and trust from their peers rather than their parents. And they tend to reject ready-made solutions from the adults rather than in favor of their own results. And so really that's why you need to get them involved in the decision making. They tend to they start questioning authority and their family values. This is an age that is really, really fun to watch their beliefs come out. I can just remember sitting back and watching this. I took it from two different perspectives a lot of times. As a parent, it frustrated the crap out of me, but then as I would step back and go, okay, I'm not a parent today. I'm gonna look at this from a youth professional, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. I loved it. Having that, figuring out their own belief system. And then you look at them and go, I don't know where this child came from, because they don't have any of the same beliefs that I have. But it's really cool. They are emotionally, they're starting to they really compare themselves to others. Like I said, especially I see it probably more in girls than boys. I could be wrong, but that is big with that age, or with that. They're concerned about physical development. They see themselves as always being on center stage. And so this is an age that they also can drive you crazy because they want to be the center of attention. And they're concerned about being liked. They strive for independence, but yet still want parental, adult approval, and they seek privacy. So this is really, this is where you start seeing doors, like bedroom doors shut, that kind of thing. Intellectually, they find justice and equality to be important issues. They're developing skills of the use of logic. They can solve problems that maybe have more than one variable. They're ready for starting to be ready for more in-depth, long-term experiences. So, starting to get them in some of these leadership roles, and they want to explore the world beyond their community. That's why a lot of our national experiences kind of start with this age group. They have the Leadership Washington Focus in DC that is for 12 to 14-year-olds. And they really focus on this this area. They want to see things beyond what's just in their own community. If you look at some things that we can do, we can provide honest information. A lot of times they have questions about what's happening to their body and that type of thing. And, we need to try to be as open as we can. I know that's, well, I hear a lot about that's a parent's responsibility. But, if a child doesn't feel comfortable talking to their parent, they need to have that caring adult that they can build that relationship with. Plan activities that are not weighted on physical abilities, because you're going to have such a wide range in there. And be patient with grooming behaviors. This is the age that they start really worrying about what their hair looks like, what their clothes look like, and you have to plan for that. Socially, we need to provide activities to be with the opposite sex in healthy ways. So planning groups, parties, fundraisers, those types of things, not one-on-one type activities. Provide involvement in teen councils and planning boards. Find time to talk to them individually to help them work through problems or discuss issues. Emotionally, we need to plan activities that don't compare one youth to another. We need to avoid singling out one child in front of a group. And we need to provide opportunities to learn some of these skills some of those emotional skills. Intellectually, we need to provide opportunities for them to ask and question ways of doing things. I think that's very healthy. And you know what? If they figure out a better way to do it, great. Let's do it that way. Plan activities that require some length of time to complete. So you're not having, every 5 to 10 minutes you have to switch activities. You can actually do an activity that takes a whole hour. You can ask questions to encourage their predicting and problem solving, starting, when we're talking about, and next month we're going to talk about experiential learning model, but as we're looking at those probing questions, starting to get them to think about predicting and problem solving. And ask them to serve as assistants and offer more complex games. So 15 to 18-year-olds. These are, teenagers are a lot of fun. They're full of life. They have lots of enthusiasm. They have lots of energy, and they feel like they can do anything. They feel like they are indestructible. They can conquer the world, and they are very much, I would say, easily misguided by advertising and the emphasis that society places on physical appearance, that type of thing. So this is where we really have to start having conversations about healthy habits. What's appropriate. And so looking at physical abilities, they are concerned with body image. They exhibit a small range of size and maturity among their peers. This age group, they really don't have as much variation. Probably freshmen do, but then I noticed yesterday I took my son up to football practice, and they're all kind of getting sort of similar in height and size. You know, those that were kind of short and chunkier are now kind of shooting up and starting to grow into their body. Everybody's about the same height. I mean, you're always going to have the ones that are quite a bit taller, but they tend to have a realistic view of limits to which their body can be tested. They know when they can stop. They're going to search for intimacy. They tend to romanticize everything. I always love when you are with this age group and they're like, oh my gosh, we've been dating forever. It's been like 2 weeks. But to them, that is forever. And so you really have to pay attention to that, though. As a youth professional, if you are traveling with youth anywhere, especially with teens, you need to be aware of their thought process. And we don't want things to happen on our watch. I mean, we all are that way. And so we really need to pay attention to that and try to think about how, what you could do to stop that. Tape on a door, on the outside of a door, is like masking tape is great once they go in for lights out, because then if it's been opened or not. If you have never done that, that's a good tool. They like to make commitments. They desire respect. They want adult leadership roles, and they can commit to follow through. Now, since these things have been put together, and I still believe that these are true, but if you read any of the brain research that's been coming out probably in the last 5 years, they are really showing now that our brains don't fully develop for decision making and those types of skills until you're about 25 to 28. And so we have to remember that where we thought that the brain was fully developed at about age 20 or about 18. So think about that. We've moved that up many years. Think about what that means for teenagers now. We have to keep that in mind a little bit. They still, they're what we used to think they had really good decision-making skills, that type of thing. They probably don't have as good as we thought. And so what I always tell people is, with this age group, you give them the responsibility, you let them attempt it, but be ready to step in if you have to and help them to complete that role. And do not see it as a failure. And hopefully they will learn the ability, and this is where I think it's really good, is learning what their limits are and knowing when they need to ask for help. And that's, as an adult working with those youth, you have to be ready to help them recognize that. So emotionally, they're beginning to accept and enjoy their own uniqueness. They want to have that acceptance within their own peer group. And so, this is where, we all know this is where you start seeing individuality, but their individuality within their own peer group. They look for confidence in others about their decisions. They're always asking their peers, what do you think about that idea? They can see themselves from the viewpoint of others. They're starting to be able to see that. They take fewer risks, sometimes. Depends on what it is, but they do tend to. They can initiate and carry out their own tasks without the supervision of others, and they are searching for career possibilities. When I said about they see themselves from the viewpoint of others, this is something that I know, we have a lot of conversations at our house about, okay, so I know you have strong beliefs in this area, but look at it from from another perspective. And we have a lot of those conversations, and I do see a real change of, yeah, I can see where, somebody might not agree with me. And then you have the conversation of, it's okay to have different beliefs. You can still be friends with that person even though you don't believe the same things. You just don't discuss that topic or whatever. So, but they're starting to be able to have that ability to do that. Intellectually, they're mastering abstract thinking. They can demonstrate and acquired knowledge. So they may learn something, but then they can demonstrate that they learned it. They may consider many perspectives of a given issue, and they lose patience in meaningless activities. This is probably the biggest thing. We have to give them activities that that will mean something to them. If we just give them busy work, they don't like it. So physically, again, provide experiences around body image, etiquette, grooming. It's, this is a great time to have, just a healthy living type activities, talk about body image, talk about, what that looks like for each group. Avoid comments that criticize or compare statute shapes and size. Socially, we need to provide activities that explore the job market, careers. By the time the youth, if they've been in our program the whole time, they know most of the project skills, especially if they stayed in one project. At this age is when we need to start bringing in the career activities, those types of things. So maybe instead of, they might raise a steer, but they also add in a component of maybe they volunteer, or they work for a rancher, or maybe they work at the vet clinic to learn more of that perspective. Looking at those, doing career exploration. Provide them the opportunity to plan their own program. Self-determined projects, if anybody is familiar with the self-determined project, that's where the young person comes up with their own goals for the project. They figure out their plan for completing that project. They aren't given lesson by lesson by lesson. They have to come up with those things. And those are really popular with this age group. And I highly recommend, if you've got somebody that wants to learn some new things, this is a good one. An example I have, one of my counties I was in, we had a young lady. She was a senior age. I think she was probably 15 at that time, 15 or 16. Now, it wasn't appropriate what she did, but this is, she had taken sewing since the time she was 9, and she was, she had gone through all the sewing curriculum. And so that year she took a self-determined sewing project, and she sewed nightwear. She actually did some lingerie. I didn't, it was kind of like I said, it was questionable, and we didn't realize that was what was happening until it showed up at the fair. Obviously, she wasn't allowed to be in Fashion Review, but it gave her, but that's what she wanted to learn how to sew, and so that's what she did. It could be something, they could learn whatever, but a self-determined project like that gives them that ability to figure out something else that they want to learn. And then you look at also, they involve them as spokespersons for issues programs. That's one of the reasons why we always ask teens to help, promote the 4-H program. Instead of you going and promoting the program to even the county commissioners, you have to give somebody in your office should be giving the update about what's happening within the 4-H program. But it's really good to get teens to go in and give their story. Right before this all started, we had the Board of Regents had a meeting, and we had, I think, 3 teens and two volunteers, and then a county commissioner, all testified in front of the Board of Regents about what 4-H meant to them. And I will be perfectly honest with you, the biggest impact of those presentations was the ones from the teens, and what it was about 4-H that made a difference in their lives. Amazing. And they are really good. You do have to work with them on that, because they aren't going to know exactly what to do, And so, we all worked with that. There was a group of us that worked with these teens, and we talked about, what kind of story do you tell? Really gave them a little bit of guidance for that, and then had them practice with us. But, those are the types of things we should be using, we should be doing. We need to plan activities that allow teens to try different roles. Let them try some different things and be willing to be wrong. At this age group, if you're wrong, admit it. It's okay. This group is not going to put you on a pedestal. You are not the coolest thing since sliced bread anymore. That's kindergarten. So, they're going to respect you more for admitting you were wrong. So intellectually, we need to involve them in carrying out plans, involve them in advisory groups and decision-making groups. If you have a leaders council, you really need to have some teens on that, and not one. If you look at a youth-adult partnership, it really should be equal number of youth as to adults on those committees. There should be youth on every committee. They need to offer vocational or career exploration activities. I know a couple of years ago, and it was planned for this year, but one of the counties brought a group of teens to to Reno to talk to different college departments about about that college, about that department, but they really took it as a career exploration. And I know we used to do Discover Your Future, and we're hoping to get that back on the books one of these days, where we bring teens to campus and they get to experience, that campus life and learn about possible careers. And so, it's in some long-term plans that we have to do something similar to that. But, the clubs can be doing some of those things. They could be bringing in different people in your community with different jobs to talk about that. Okay, the other piece, I'm just going to quickly go over these, but every year it used to come out of Benoit College in in Wisconsin, but I just learned while I was researching this, it actually is now with another university, and I can't remember which university that is now. I'm trying to find my piece of paper that tells me, because the professors that created this list moved to another oh no, this one didn't have it. They moved to another university, and so that's no longer, but they have the pass list from Benoit College. They look at the incoming class of freshmen and think about what is it about these young people that is so interesting. So when you look at the class of 2023, which this was last year's class, they haven't come out with this, with the new one, obviously, but you look at it, Pearl Harbor for our grandparents, Kennedy for our parents or for their parents. Probably, I'm not sure if I necessarily completely agree, but 9/11 is a historical event, because Kennedy was a historical event for my parents. For me, it was I'd have to think about that. Probably, 9/11, but for them, 9/11 is a historical event. The thumb, the jump, and the USB drive have always pushed floppy disks further into the future. They've never been around when a floppy disk has been available. They don't even really, the other day my husband brought in, and I don't see him now. Oh, yesterday my husband was cleaning a room, and he brought in CDs for me. And he goes, "Hey, I just found these for you." And they're pictures of Cody when he was a baby. So from 2005, because at that time, these were CDs were the best way to save large files. And Cody's like, and then I looked at him and I go, "Well, I'm not sure where I'm going to pull those off, because my computer doesn't even have a drive anymore. It doesn't have a CD or DVD drive in it anymore. I can get an external one, but they don't come with them." But then I remember back in probably 95, I was buying my first computer. Like, it was my first big purchase. I went to the bank and I got a loan because, you know, it was $3,500 for a computer at that time. And I wanted a laptop so bad. And I went in and looked at computers, and they looked at me and they said, laptops will never have a CD, because I wanted one with a CD drive. And they were like, they'll never come with a CD drive because it'll make them too heavy. And, you know, we all know how that works. They came with CD drives for years. Now they're back to not having CD drives, or many of them don't. We did discover that Cody's laptop does have a CD drive, so I can pull those pictures on, save them onto a thumb drive, and put them on my computer now. But you know, think about that technology. You know, they've never even been around for those, or the you know, the whatever the sizes were, the big floppy drives or the small floppy drives. So the tech big four, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Google, are to them what the big three automakers were to, you know, to our grandparents, you know, Ford, Chevy, Chrysler. That, you know, they don't even really know what the big three automakers are anymore. Half of their generation is composed of people of color. Oklahoma City has always had a national memorial at the center. They were not even alive when Oklahoma City was bombed. Because of Richard Reed's explosive footwear, passengers have always had to take off their shoes to go through security at the airport. You know, these guys have never not gone through security without taking off their shoes. They're as non-judgmental about sexual orientation as their parents were about smoking pot. Snapchat has become their social media app of choice, thus relieving them of the dilemma of whether or not to friend mom. I think that's, you know, they may well not have a younger sibling because the birth rate in the US has been dropping since they were in grammar school. You know, people are not having as many children now. PayPal has always been an online option for purchases. They've witnessed 2 African-American secretaries of state, the election of a Black president, Disney's first Black president, and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. Think about that. That's, you know, that's just common for them now. When they crawled on the floor, when they were crawling is when news headlines began crawling along the bottom of the TV screen. Segways have always been trying to revolutionize the way people move. YouTube has become the video version of Wikipedia. You know, how many of you all go to YouTube when you're trying to figure out something? I know I did just on Saturday or on Sunday. I couldn't get the steering wheel of my husband's pickup up. Like, he always drives with it way low, and I don't like it touching my knees when I'm driving, and so I couldn't figure out how to get it up. So what I went to YouTube to figure out how to move the steering wheel on his pickup. And so, you know, I know when we installed our dishwasher, that's how we installed our dishwasher, was YouTube videos. So think about those, and you can see some of those other ones. I think it's just kind of you know, blackboards have never been dumb, if you understand what that means. They've really never had blackboards in their classrooms. Maybe in some of in the smaller rural communities, they might still have actual blackboards with chalk, but most of our classrooms now, even in our public schools, are either whiteboards or smart boards, you know, smart whiteboards. So think about that. They've never had to like clap chalk erasers together. Some of these are super, super interesting, and it gets us to think about things a little, you know, things are very different. And then I just love these. These are just like my favorite things that I've learned. So when you think about this age group, I've learned that if you spread the peas out on your plate, it looks like you ate more. That's in the brain of a 6-year-old. I've learned that you should never jump out of a 2nd-story window using a sheet for a parachute. That's in the brains of a 10-year-old. And I think we all know probably 10-year-olds that have tried that. I've learned that you shouldn't confuse a black crayon with a Tootsie Roll. And I couldn't find a black crayon that was out of the package. I was like, crap, you know, that would have been, I may have to stage that photo at some point. I've learned that when you have 3 of your wild friends in the car, the driver freaks. I've learned that you can't hide a piece of broccoli in a glass of milk. I've learned that when you wave at people in the country, they stop what they're doing and wave back. I've learned that if you laugh and drink soda pop at the same time, it will come out your nose. I've learned that goldfish don't like Jell-O. Real goldfish don't like Jell-O. And I've learned that girls sweat just as much as boys. So just thinking about how their brains work, those are comments from brains of these children. Okay, any questions on ages and stages? Okay, we're gonna go into targeting life skills model, and this one won't take us, it'll take us about the 10 minutes. Many of you have probably seen this life skills wheel. If you haven't, this is a photo. This is the one that we use in 4-H for the way we look at life skills. This was created by a 4-H specialist in Iowa named Pat Hendricks. Oh gosh, let's see. She was in Idaho back in the early 1990s, like probably 1990 through 92 or 3, 4. I know she wasn't there when I started working in 94, but she was there. She had just left and went to Iowa. She had started working on this when she was in when she was in Idaho, and then completed it when she was in Iowa. So it's been around a long time, but when you think about this, okay, we have to look at what is youth development. It's the process of mental, physical, social, and emotional growth during which young people prepare to live a productive and satisfying life within the customs and regulations of their society. So how are they going to do that? You know, youth development experiences of high quality don't just happen. We have to be intentional about creating positive youth development experiences. And this is where, you know, this life skills piece really comes into effect. We need to encourage life skill development while delivering subject matter content, and we need to achieve specific results for that. So, you know, we're also finding it's becoming more and more important for us to show accountability or be accountable for showing program impact. And so the way we do that is through teaching life skills, and then we measure what those, you know, we measure that in the young people. In one of the sessions, and I believe it's a little bit later on, I haven't talked about it, evaluation. We will talk about evaluating for impact of our programs. We have a couple of tools that we use for that. One of those is the 4-H Common Measures tool. And with that, that tool, the one, we do the annual survey every year, which hopefully everybody understands. That will be coming out. We're gonna launch it in August this year. That is a tool that measures the life skills that young people are learning in 4-H. And so, you know, we're able to use that data then to show impact of our programming. This will be year 3, so it's kind of nice that we're able to start really looking at some of those results and comparing some of the results. But what are life skills? So a skill is a learned ability to do something well, and life skills are the ability an individual can learn, the abilities individuals can learn to help them to be successful in living a productive and satisfying life. So we want to teach them skills that they need. Within our targeting life skills model, we identify categories of life skills. So she really, you know, she took it and kind of broke it in to make it a little bit easier. They're based on the 4 H's from the 4-H Clover that represent the head, heart, hands, and health. So the way that looks is there is the competency under head is knowledge, reasoning, and creativity. So you're going to see thinking and managing. So here's the definition for those two. You're also under heart is really what you're talking about, personal or social competencies. So that's where relating and caring are. Those are the broader categories. Vocational or citizenship is under hands, so giving and working. And then health and physical is under health, and that's living and being. So you can see, under the head right here, you have managing and thinking, just like I said. And then under managing, there's roughly about 5 life skills under each one of those. So resiliency, keeping records, wise use of resources, planning and organizing, goal setting. Thinking, you can see what those thinking are. Now, obviously, in every lesson that you teach or every lesson that a volunteer teaches, you're not going to be teaching all of these. You're probably not even under managing, you're probably not even going to be teaching all 5 of those. But you do need to, as you're creating a lesson or a program, you need to think about what are the life skills that I want these young people to come out with a better understanding of. Probably won't have mastered it yet, but they can at least have a better understanding of what that looks like. But you can see how they're broke up. So the purpose of this is really just to provide a way to simplify the coordination of a life skill development with ages and stages tasks. Now, do we think that a 6 to 8-year-old or a 5 to 8-year-old is going to be able to have concern for others? Based on what we learned, just a little while ago, do we think that they're going to have concern for others? Probably not, because we know that that's not something that they have the ability to do. But they do, you can help them gain skills in cooperation or even, some of the communication. So you really have to, you're probably not going to pick problem solving for a 5 to 8-year-old for a Cloverbud program. You could start picking them for that junior age group, that 9 to 11-year-olds. That's really, but you have to think about developmentally what's appropriate, and also, what are some of those life skills. So we want them, to be able to achieve those identified outcomes. So the value of this model is really to assist youth to reach their full potential through a positive approach to life skill development, delivering information and skill practice. Almost, I believe, all of the 4-H curriculum, either if it's created at National 4-H Mall or Shop 4-H now, I guess is what it's called, or by another state, they all have a life skill attached to a lesson plan. What are the life skills that young people are going to learn from these lessons? And I think that that's really critical. There's many, many, many reasons we say you must use 4-H approved curriculum, because 1, it's research-based, and 2, or evidence-based, and 2, it has those life skills already identified, and so it helps you. And then you can create the evaluation if there's not already an evaluation tool. And then writing a specific learning objective for life skill development that are measurable. And one of our sessions for the orientation, that's one of the last sessions, is how to write a lesson plan, how to write objectives for your lesson plans. So we will talk about how you can write specific learning objectives that are measurable. That's a big piece of that session. And then also it helps you in completing an instructional plan that creates experiences that are based on the experiential learning theory to achieve life skill development. We really need to have, in order to gain life skill, for that life skill development, it really needs to be experiential learning. And like I said, next month we're going to talk about experiential learning. And then identifying observable or measurable indicators of change using those indicators to effectively evaluate the program. So that's really the value of the life skills model. There's been a couple of tools that have been created trying to measure some of the life skills that are out there, but most of those have kind of, I don't know if they've gone away, they're just not used as much, because when they created the 4-H common measures at the national level, that was the big piece, is making sure that they had tools that measured those life skills. So if it is, you know, they have those general life skills, which is the universal tool, which some of you are familiar with the universal tool. That measures things like communication, decision making, problem solving, those types. And then within STEM and healthy living, civic engagement, and college and career readiness, they have some of those life skills specific to those activities actually involved, or they have those embedded in those questions. So does anybody have any questions about the life skills model or developmental levels? I know, you know, we could spend a whole day on both of those topics. Really could. It is, so it is one of those, you know, I'm pretty passionate about those topics. I know I went through them very quickly, but I am very passionate about these developmental, or these youth development theories, because I think we need to be grounded as a 4-H professional. I know when I was going through my education, my degree is in agricultural education. I was going to be an ag teacher, FFA advisor. And I can remember I was about, oh gosh, I was probably close to 10 years into my job as a 4-H professional. And I finally went to a training where I learned all of these developmental levels. I learned all of these things. And I was like, a light bulb just went off, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, as a teacher as a teacher, I never learned what was developmentally appropriate for my group, you know, for my age group. Or I never learned, you know, I learned how to create a lesson plan, and I learned how to teach, but I didn't learn experientially how to teach. I didn't, you know, and I was in a, you know, I mean, I'm in a program that teaches you experiential, you know, I mean, that's the whole premise behind, you know, the ag program, is to try or to do that. And so it just a light bulb. And so I've been really, really passionate. And if I could, I would get into teacher education programs and teach some of these theories. But it hasn't happened yet. So when I teach sometimes when I was in Idaho, I would teach an intro to 4-H youth development, and many of the students were ag ed majors, because they would get a minor in extension ed, and it was a required class. And so I would always spend time talking about these theories and what those look like, so that they would have that understanding. So, but any questions? I know I've talked a lot. All right, well, if not, then I will let everybody go. Thank you guys for joining this morning, and I will talk to you guys in a couple, well, next month we are going to be doing, I believe, next month is experiential learning, and then developmental assets. So the asset approach to youth development, which is out of the Search Institute. So I think that's the one for next month. I don't remember. We have 2 youth development theories. That's what I know. So, but if not, thank you guys.